I get quite a few Q&A questions come in just because I don't talk a whole lot about my background personally while I'm doing interviews because I like hearing the guests speak as much as possible. So I do want to get through a couple more of these Q&A questions because I do find them fun to answer and I am enjoying myself. So let's jump right in, see what our first question is. What are some effective techniques for directing children who are naturally shy or introverted? I actually don't have a lot of experience with this because the when I'm doing children's theater, normally the children that are there are super, super high energy and they really want to be there. So I did teach at a theater for 2 years, and there were a few kids who weren't quite as excited about it, possibly kind of pushed into it a little bit by their parents just because they wanted them to get, be a little bit more outgoing, experience something they hadn't done before. So I have worked with a few who are a little bit more shy. What I would say is you really have to make them feel as comfortable as quickly as possible. And that means comfortable in the space, make sure they're comfortable with the stage, walking around, comfortable with the sets, with the props, comfortable with the other kids. Also comfortable if you're using vocabulary or terms that they're not familiar with. You don't want them to be turned off and just stop listening because you're saying words they don't understand. So, and that's for, really for all the kids. As you're explaining stuff, make sure they really understand what's going on. They're not feeling like they're being excluded because they don't understand the terms you're using. That could be downstage, upstage, props. I mean, if you're 8 years old, you might not know what the word props are. So just really making sure they know what's going on. No big surprises. Don't just drop them drop them into things and assume that they can deal with it. Adults who love doing improv, they love it. You just drop them into something, give them no warning, and then just make them go. Kids, especially if they're a little bit nervous, you don't want to do that at all. You want to make sure they know what's going on, they're comfortable, they're happy about everything that's happening. And really more than anything, at least for me, is I really want to make sure that they're focusing on the other person. So they're looking at them, they ask a question, they're literally looking at the person that they're asking the question to, and they're waiting for the response. So really just getting them comfortable, don't surprise them, make sure they're having fun. If everybody's a little bit antsy, go ahead and give it a 10-minute break, let them run around, let them yell, scream, jump around, let them get that little bit of energy out, then they'll go back to focusing a little bit better. So I would say that's kind of what I did with the kids that needed maybe just a little bit more of a little bit more of a shove into the outward excitability that some of the other kids already had. What's a skill you have lost that you wish you still had? Um, that's how much time do we have? Let's go with I would say one that I was thinking about a bit more recently would be the ability to memorize music almost instantly. When I was younger, I would say I started playing drums at the age of 10 or 11. I was pretty young when I started, and I absolutely loved it. And by the time I was moved up all the way through into high school, I was doing everything. I mean, jazz band, pep band, marching band, orchestras. Uh, I was in a few different bands outside of school. Like I was in a band at church, and we did everything from, kind of contemporary Christian type music all the way over to rock music and blues. And then that's also the first place where I started playing what we'd refer to as oldies. First time I played Buddy Holly and, Andrew Sisters and the whole like Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy and that sort of thing. Like that was really my first experience into all those different genres, which I wasn't really familiar with. Anyways, I would say marching band was the specific thing that got me to the point where when you're doing it so much that I know there was one time they needed us to march in some kind of parade that was coming up, but we absolutely couldn't use our music. And we didn't find out until the absolute last second. So it was one entire song, 3.5, 4 minutes. And I memorized it in less than 10 minutes. Whole thing, whole song from beginning to end, playing the entire time. There weren't any big rests in it, and just literally being able to memorize entire songs in minutes. That was a skill that I had. I did brag about it a little bit. I was a teenager, so I mean, I kind of had to. Yeah, I would say that that was probably it. And that sort of thing really was pointed out to me a lot when I was doing my undergrad because I took a few different dance classes. I'm terrible at dance. I don't like doing it. I just did it because I'm a director and I wanted to have more. I just wanted to gain an experience of what it's like being in dance classes. And some of those classes, like especially people who have been doing dance for their entire lives, and at this point, now in their late teens, early 20s, we would do sequences and they would just nail them perfectly the first time and I couldn't even figure out what was going on. And it's because each separate little element of the dance, they had so much experience, they had so many things to draw from in their own memory, so many times they had done those movements in other pieces that when you just rearrange them around a little bit and do them in a different order for whatever we were doing in class, it was so easy for them to do. I, of course, had no idea what was going on, and for me, it had this it was reminiscent of that feeling of being in band and, especially being a drummer. Didn't matter if I was playing snare drum, I could have been playing the quads, could be playing the bass drum, could be playing marimbas. Instrument didn't really matter. It's once you're playing music so much every single day that you start seeing all the different sequences that happen between different songs and you're able to rearrange them and put them together, memorize them, remember them. You're not struggling to do them and you can memorize things really, really quickly. So, yeah, I would say if I could still do that, I would really enjoy that. I can still sight read quite well without generally without making many mistakes at all, but I can't memorize like entire songs in the same way that I used to be able to. All right. What is the importance of a strong opening scene? I'm a huge, huge fan of big, extravagant, outrageous things right from the beginning. And I also like to start projects, doesn't matter what it is. Screenplays, stage plays, audio dramas, comic books, like everything that I work on, I like whatever the first image. I want that first image to be memorable. Like I want it to really punch you in the face. I don't like subtle. I want it to be big and bold. And I would say, one of the comic books that I'm working on, it's actually not big and bold, but it is reminiscent of something else, and it's a bit of a joke, at least for myself, for any of the, fans out there of the original Star Trek is, Kirk and the apple. So I start one of my comic books with a character eating a gigantic cheeseburger, and the cheeseburger is falling apart and it's slimy and it's falling down onto their clothing and it's all over the floor. And that's literally how I start the story is with that character eating the giant cheeseburger. And it was a bit of an homage to Kirk with the apple. So that's the very first scene. And then immediately after that, they're on a spaceship. The spaceship is almost destroyed. So it's just right in your face, no pausing, no hesitating. I really like a strong opening scene and specifically a strong opening image. I think it sets the story up in a way and specifically in the way that you want it to be. So whatever way your story goes, start it that way from the very beginning. Don't there is an argument to be made to kind of, ease people into the story. I'm not one of those people. I'd rather punch you in the face at the beginning of the story. So that's just me though. So